It's 2011 and Novak Djokovic now considers Rafael Nadal the greatest player in tennis, even with Federer in the picture. That same year, Novak destroys Nadal and flips the switch forever. Here is why Novak never feared Nadal. Djokovic and Nadal met for the first time in 2006 at the quarterfinals of the French Open, and Novak retired against Nadal after 2 sets. Fast forward to the 2009 Madrid Masters, and Nadal had now won 14 of their 18 meetings. A defeated Novak said that he needed to play with 2 rackets to beat Nadal. The Spaniard obviously had Novak's number early on in the rivalry, but Djokovic had 3 reasons not to fear Nadal, and with that, he was able to beat Nadal many more times than any other player. This is what he did. Novak knew that to beat Nadal, he had to work on most aspects of his game over time. He started to raise his level of play in crucial moments. Before 2011, they had played in 6 tiebreaks, with Rafa winning 5 of them. But since then, tiebreaks between them has evened out, with Djokovic leading 7-6. Unlike Rafa, who would sometimes run around his backhand and fall out of position, Novak developed a solid backhand that became arguably the best in the game. Formidable, fast, and deceptive, the Serbian also knew that Rafa's heavy spins wouldn't bother him much on hard courts unlike clay. So he started to pounce on balls earlier and became the aggressor, attacking the Spaniard's backhand and defense as much as possible and leaving Nadal with little time to unload his lethal forehands. Novak also started to work on his serve dynamics, and it's really no surprise that Novak now has almost 3,000 career aces more than Nadal, despite playing fewer matches, and it's for the same reason Novak has won almost 1,500 second serve points, more than the Spaniard. He simply developed a more superior serve. I think we could all agree that Rafa's serve is just about the worst among the big boys. Servers aside, Novak also beefed up his already excellent return of serves, thereby developing a more superior game than his rival. Djokovic wasn't just pushing the ball back into play, rather he was opening up angles and painting lines even when on the defense. Even volleys and net play, which were Novak's obvious weaknesses, started to improve too. Having played a lot of games against Nadal, Novak took time to study Nadal and knew him so well that he turned the initially one-sided rivalry on its head, but not after improving his physical conditioning. Early in his career, Djokovic struggled a lot with his health and fitness. He dealt with stomach issues, dizziness, blurred vision, cramps, heat exhaustion, and had retired against several players, including twice against Nadal. Fortunately for the Serbian, an extraordinary diagnosis in 2010 changed his career. He was advised to stay away from gluten-containing foods, and with a couple of other tweaks to his diet, exercise routine, and lifestyle, Djokovic was now able to go toe-to-toe with Nadal physically. With improved physical conditioning came the ability to be patient enough against Nadal, who was reliant on heavy balls and long rallies to win games. By 2011, Nadal had no answers to Djokovic, who beat him in 6 consecutive finals. It was the turning point in their rivalry. And when Nadal lost his 7 consecutive finals to Djokovic in the 2012 Australian Open final, he knew that he could no longer outlast Djokovic, but at the same time, he wasn't entirely sure what to do to beat Novak. The match ended after a lung-bursting 5 hours and 53 minutes. It was the longest Grand Slam final ever played. Novak refused to give up physically, and both men could barely stand during the trophy presentation ceremony. By this time, the rivalry now stood at 16-14 for Nadal, a stark contrast to the 14-4 margin which he led by 3 years earlier. However, none of these improvements would have made a difference if Novak didn't work on something else. This brings us to the third reason. With Nadal dominating and closing in on Federer towards the end of the 2000s, it took extraordinary self-belief for a player to believe that he could beat Nadal. On clay for that matter, many players were already defeated once they knew that they were facing the king of clay on his favourite surface. Initially, it sounded like a joke when Novak said Rafa wasn't unbeatable, but he truly believed in himself, and he ended up doing it not once, but twice at Roland Garros in 2015 and 2021, and also defeated Rafa at all clay court Masters 1000 events. I think I've said it before that Djokovic's mentality needs to be studied. His ability to go from 0 to 100 when nobody believes he can is absolutely phenomenal. Back in the Wimbledon 2018 semis, a 21st ranked Djokovic, who was still returning to form after an elbow surgery, saved 3 set points against Nadal to take the 3rd set and ultimately win the title. Extremely confident in his ability, Djokovic has won 8 titles after saving match points and a total of 16 times in his career, losing only 3 times. When you look at Nadal, who has won 17 and lost 8 to Federer, who won 22 but lost 24. It tells you that Djokovic is the best definition of clutch in the game. He has the supreme belief that as long as he is dialed in, he can beat anybody. By developing a complete and more superior game, improving his physical conditioning, and developing a winning mentality, Novak never feared Nadal because he knew just what to do to overcome his biggest rival. Let's briefly look at how these developments shaped the Djokovic-Nadal rivalry. A brute force of nature versus machine-level efficiency, the rivalry between Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic is not only the most prolific in men's tennis and arguably the greatest in the sport, statistically and in many other aspects. Considering that only 1 year separates both men in terms of age, it's quite remarkable to see that they follow different trajectories to greatness. Rafa was a prodigy and peaked much earlier than his rival, winning 17 ATP titles as a teenager, but when Djokovic finally arrived at the party in the early 2010s, he took control, and when Nadal faced Novak, he knew that he was dealing with a player who wasn't scared of him. Some stats about Nadal's rivalry with Novak might surprise you. Djokovic and Nadal have played 59 times, and Djokovic holds a narrow 30-29 head-to-head victory. They've also met in 28 finals at all levels, and again Novak leads 15-13. However, Nadal is well ahead of Djokovic at majors, leading 11-7, but most of those matches have been on clay, which is Nadal's best surface by a mile. Rafael Nadal has not defeated Djokovic on hard courts for almost a decade. In fact, he hasn't even taken a set off Novak on hard courts since 2013. Nadal hasn't beaten Djokovic on grass since 2008. Meanwhile, Novak has beaten Nadal twice at the French Open and has had many tight contests with the Spaniard on his favourite surface. It was Djokovic who ended Nadal's 39-match winning streak at Roland Garros in 2015, but it also goes the other way around. Nadal has also demolished Novak at times, like in the 2020 French Open final where he beat Novak 6-love, 6-2, 7-5 in a very one-sided final. In terms of titles, Djokovic just edges out Nadal in Grand Slams and Masters 1000s, but is finally poised to extend that lead considering his blistering form and longevity. In terms of the quality of matches, records broken, and number of matches, I strongly consider Novak's rivalry with Nadal the greatest in men's tennis in the Open era. No other player has beaten Djokovic more than Nadal, and no player has beaten Nadal more than Djokovic. At the beginning, the pair occasionally had dinners together, but according to Novak, friendship became impossible due to their intense rivalry. Still, both men have nothing but respect for each other. When it comes to who's better, I'm pretty sure both fan bases will have arguments for both players, and Rafa fans might point out the fact that the Spaniard had to deal with more injuries, which is true. But for me, it is quite easy to see Novak having the edge anyway. What are your thoughts though? Isn't it quite crazy that Djokovic is Nadal's biggest competitor on clay and was Federer's biggest rival on grass? That shows you just how complete his game is, because he also dominates hard courts. Even prime Nadal was forced to acknowledge that Djokovic at his absolute best was the perfect player and was unbeatable. From the China Open in 2013 to the 2016 Italian Open, Djokovic beat Nadal 11 out of 12 times they faced each other, and in the 7 consecutive times he won between 2015 and 2016, Nadal couldn't even win a single set. Djokovic doesn't just beat his opponents, he also defeats them mentally. Novak is more competitive on all surfaces than any other player. As a student of the game, I have nothing but the highest level of respect and admiration for both players. To be fair, I think Rafa has a healthy ego and is an epitome of hard work and resilience. Djokovic, on the other hand, has shown that impossibility is just a made-up word. Novak and Nadal have both pushed themselves to the limit in every way. In the history of the sport, both players have their spot at the very top. But after his latest French Open win, it seems as if his true dominance is just starting. Can anything really stop Novak Djokovic? I guess you have to watch this video to find out.